Childhood related at all, I think I've worked on myself pretty good. But one of the issues I was having is with my girlfriend. We've gone from monogamous to an open relationship to now we're monogamous again, and I'm like, shit, this is really kind of difficult because uh, um, we became. It was my choice to become monogamous because I'm like, oh, this is what she wants. I'm gonna give her what she wants, kind of thing. And I also wanted to grow closer to her too, because I could feel like she was really hurting with some of the things some of the relationships that I was developing with other people. I could tell it was hurting her, and I really wanted to focus on her because I love her. Like I think she's like my special person. And in fact, I gave her a ring. We're engaged. So everyone's like, what the fuck? Like you're not even divorced. How can you be engaged? So anyway, I chose to do this. And so like the challenge I'm having is I'm going to the river. I'm meeting beautiful people, and they're like, so what do you do? I'm like, I'm a sexual healer. And I'm like, they're like, well, how do you do this? I'm like, shit, how do I do this? Because I'm now monogamous. And so this was the challenge that I was bringing to the ceremony, was like, help me. How do I navigate these waters where I don't want to flirt with open relationship, because she has a lot of personal stuff that's going on in her life right now that to add that on top of it was just too much. But I'm like, how can I do this? Like, what's the proper path for me to follow to explore and to use my sexual healing, but still keep the integrity of the relationship going? And kid you not, man, this is exactly what the medicine brought me. So the medicine showed me. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, like asking like these questions, And I see myself like don put on like this doctor's like lab coat. Like I'm wearing this white coat. I'm a doctor now, and I'm going into to see somebody, and I see them. I give them a treatment, and then I leave. And the medicine says, you are just like a doctor. You perform your treatment, and then you leave, and you still go home to your family. This is what doctors do. They meet with different patients each day, and they still go home and they have a wife and kids. And I'm like, holy shit. So anyway, I presented this information to my girlfriend, or my fiance, I guess. I'm like, yeah, this is what I think I'm doing. And she's like, that's beautiful. That's fantastic. She's like, I totally can see that. Like, you could definitely do this. She's like, the problem I've been having is that you've been doing this in other people's homes or in our bed at your place. Oh,
so the church.
Yes. Okay. So we just bought a building. Sense. So we built a church, and in the basement is where the sexual healing is going to take place. And she's like,
therapy,
yeah. And she's like, fuck. She's like, I can get around this idea of you becoming like a legitimate professional. Like,
what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the NorCal X podcast YouTube channel. With me today, I got Ryan, co-host of Topless Talk. I've been on his show. His is private for the time being. Message him or some of the social apps if you want to see some of his newer content. You're still going through the legal process, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm going through a divorce right now. I'll be finished end of October, which is right around my anniversary.
And are we going to put everything back up after that?
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a complete relaunch. It's interesting because I've grown as a person, and the show has definitely evolved since the first episode that we ever had on there. But we'll have the old episodes up there for sure, so people can see the growth and how the trajectory has changed.
So what are the big misconceptions you think about Topless Talk? Like some people immediately are turned off because they see topless women and they think, oh, it's like it's
frat boy thing. Yeah, very juvenile. Yeah, like, oh, this adolescent boy, look, he's in the tits and shit like that. That's like a huge misconception, but also like there are people that are just like, well, I'm not into naked women or naked people. Like, why would I turn into your show? Or it's like, it's a podcast. How do you even know if they're topless? Like, this is stupid. I've had that a lot too. Like this guy thinks he's like this cool man that has these topless women, but they could all be clothed for all we know because it's a podcast. I'm like, we got videos, we got our wall of boobs, we got all this stuff, but I think what gets lost in all of the translation is the fact that topless is basically that it's completely revealing, that there are no topics that are off limits. And I think that's the best part about it is we dive into every topic that there is. In fact, I was going to tell you this. I had a guest, not a guest. I have a listener, and he reached out to me. He's like, "Man, I love your show. I listen to all your episodes. I wish you'd ask some of the guests about their about some current events, like what are their thoughts on like Bidenflation or Martha Vineyard and all this stuff." And I'm like, you're gonna find out how stupid some of our guests really are if we did that.
Yeah, I think maybe that's something I could probably help because I'm always. I try to avoid national news. I try to focus on Northern California news, even though it's probably been 2 months since I've recorded.
Yeah.
This will be the first episode, and I don't know how long, and so much is going on between both of us. I know our old recording studio, we were having a lot of issues with the AC.
Oh, man.
It was a nice place, but it was getting really hot, and with
it was humble beginnings.
With the heat wave, right?
Yeah.
The cameras were crashing. Did that happen when you were on your last?
It did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a beautiful guest, and it just failed for us.
And that will go up here soon, probably this weekend. Again, email. Do we have an email for?
The email that I have it's Topless Pics.
At Gmail?
I think it's Topless Talk Pics at Gmail, yeah.
And then send them a message on Instagram.
Instagram's probably the best way if you want to find them.
Yeah. And he'll send you the link of the newer episodes. I don't know when we're gonna put everything back up. Right?
End of October, once my divorce is finalized. And this is just, good practice. I'm just being prudent. Like my divorce attorney's like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't care what you do in your personal time. It just looks bad if you're trying to, present to the court that you are a stable, loving father, and like, oh, the opposing side is like, well, what about this Topless talk show over here? And so it's like, it's kind of right. And like, it's just play it cool. Not that we're like acrimonious or anything like that, but in the event that something were to happen, I don't want to have any fuel to the fire.
So the reason we kind of did this episode, we're recording in my backyard, was Ryan recently had a psychedelic experience, ayahuasca. I've had one guest. I had other guests that I was going to start when I rebooted in 2019. 2 younger kids, Jesse and his friend. My apologies, Jesse, if you're watching. If you see this, you came into the store once. I didn't recognize you. It's been 2 years. Reach out to me. We can do it over again. We'll do it correct with the right cameras. We'll have studios, everything. And I'm very intrigued about what Ryan experienced. And everyone has a misconception about psychedelics and ayahuasca, and everyone thinks, and you know what? Honestly, maybe it's not for everyone.
That's a hard thing. I mean, because like, it might not. I mean, that's probably a good thing because there's a screening process that they go through. Like, if you're like on antidepressants, or if you've had like a psychotic episode, probably shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
They also like, but at the same time, like, it's medicine. Like, it's very healing and therapeutic. Like, for me, I'm like almost like a missionary now. Like, I'm like going to go out and like just proselyte this to the world because it's like so healing.
I'm intrigued by ayahuasca because to me, it's like how did indigenous people who have no technology know about NAO inhibitors, right? Because I think DMT is in a lot of plants, but our gut doesn't process or has a inhibitor that prevents it from reacting in our bloodstream. And scientists don't know really what DMT is. A lot of people think it comes from our pineal gland, the third eye. There's so much research and everything going into it. Right now, I think Harvard or Cornell just finished psilocybin for PTSD. One therapy session with a psychologist is curing PTSD, and there was no cure for PTSD.
And it's crazy. So so San Francisco County has just legalized that and ayahuasca. It's now completely like legit to do. Hopefully the rest of the state will follow suit. But here's the thing, like this whole war on drugs, it's like, why in the world did ayahuasca and like, mushrooms or other like naturally recurring, even like marijuana for the longest time was like on this controlled
Schedule A.
Schedule A drug, like it's controlled
like
substance. Yeah, right. Cocaine is as natural as it comes. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely processed. But the thing is like, it's like these things are so natural and so healing in so many ways. And it's like, why in the world did they get put there? I mean, you can go down this whole rabbit hole of like, oh, pharmaceutical companies that can't they want to basically replicate that, but through synthetics, and then they can get, they can make their billions of dollars that way. So that's one aspect of it. But I think the other part too is if you actually heal people, then you now have a population that's actually like consciously, evolved and elevated, and it's a lot more difficult to corral and to control and to keep dumb the masses when they're awakened in this or enlightened, I should say. I don't want to say they're woke, but they're definitely enlightened.
But there's a great book by Starhawk called The Fifth Sacred Thing, or not the fifth, or I think that's a fifth. I might be confusing it with Don Miguel Ruiz, but I think it's the fourth or fifth sacred thing. And
or the Fifth Agreement.
No, it's like a story about like the future where like the north and the south of California, Southern California becomes like this huge corporation where they genetically birth kids specifically for pedophilia, women specifically for sex slaves. Like,
sounds very real life.
They say dystopian, but then there's one side of society that's all corporate, and like the soldiers that work for these corporations are like numbers, right?
Yeah.
And this other part of society, like Northern California, San Francisco, has sex temples, regenerative farming. They live in harmony with the land, balance with the land.
Interesting.
But and it's a great book. My apologies if I'm not saying the name of the title.
But if it's a Don Miguel like book, like I actually have all of his books. I haven't read them all, but
I think that's the fourth and the fifth agreement from Don Miguel Ruiz. But I don't know if this is called the fourth or the fifth element.
Yeah,
It's a whole story on which could possibly happen because communist China, how they were doing that stuff with an embryo.
Yeah,
I don't know what they did.
I don't know exactly what happened there now.
And but yeah, there's a lot of things that can go south, and but there's also evolution, right? Because we're evolving, and I think if we all use psychedelics, or even not everyone, let's put our leaders, right, that instead of being voted in, you have to do a ceremony. Well, there's no lying there, right? And it's going to reveal your
true intentions.
Right?
It's like a truth serum.
Yep. And I think that has to be the only way to really solve problems.
It's so interesting because this particular medicine, it confronts you with what it is you're hiding. And there was shit that I was hiding from that I didn't even realize I was hiding from until it was like brought up. I was like, oh yeah, that's something I should deal with right now.
So let's kind of go back to how you met. Can you discuss details about how?
Yeah, of course I can.
This happened because I know it's still not legal here, and
I
know things can happen to people who guide you through a ceremony.
So these people are in San Francisco,
and
so it's completely legal, and so there's no. I mean, it's legal statewide. Federally, of course, it's not. They're able to get their substance through it's grown here in the United States.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I know there's a church
there's a church also.
I forget, they're in New Mexico. There's two of them.
They're here
from Brazil.
They're here also in
Santa Diamond or something like that.
It's like they were explaining it to me. They know all these different people because they've been around the community for a very long time. And in fact, it's interesting because when I brought this up. I recently had purchased a church building I want to offer this as a therapeutic center, and I want to get I guess my religious exemption to offer it as a healing sanctuary for people. They can use plant-based medicine, whether it's this or the magic mushroom or just whatever. And the church it's two levels. We have the main floor, and then we have a basement that's also for sexual healing as well, because there's a lot of people that are just struggling with a lot of sexual trauma. And when I mentioned this to him, he's like, "Oh, we can come over there. We can do that. We're actually in the process of becoming a religious, I guess, entity or organization that they could go ahead and they can do it throughout the United States."
Nice. Yeah, I think it's needed. I know it's not easy. Aubrey Marcus has a great podcast. He even has a community called Fit for Service that they teach you just breath and just how to be vulnerable and be real leaders of your community, right?
That's beautiful. It's so needed. And,
from like even ecstatic dance, right?
Yeah.
Some of us don't know how to, are embarrassed to dance, but but Aubrey Marcus is probably the leading person that has actually a community, and those people who meet there are in different areas, and they become like a group of people that help each other,
And that's so beautiful. And it doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you get there, like whether it's through dance or through breath work or through, any kind of psychedelic, as long as you're moving in a direction that's going to give you this wholeness, that's going to let you be introspective and to just resolve a lot of the issues that we have internally and then eventually externally. It's growth, and it's going in the right direction.
So let's talk about how your experience of taking ayahuasca. I know you had 2 days that you took it.
So I met these people. I did 2 days.
Right? You had to.
I fasted.
What was the process beforehand?
Yeah. So what happened was, I'll back up a little story. So I knew to sunbathe on the Yuba River, and I had met them prior, a year ago. I was married a year ago. I was a devout Mormon. Nudist Mormon.
You were a nudist when you were Mormon?
On the tail end of that one, yeah. I'm no longer a Mormon right now. But anyway, what had happened is I had met them, and so I saw them a year ago. And they're musicians. I'm a musician, and I was like, oh, hey, what's up? We became like, friends, whatever. Saw them again this year. But I didn't know that they were traveling musicians. And this year I met them on the river, and I almost didn't go to this part of the river. I was like, I really don't want to go there again. My car got broken into earlier this year. I just don't want to experience that again. So I went anyway. Saw them, went up the river, did my thing, laid out, talked to people, came back. They were still playing, and I got into a deeper conversation. And the lady who is the guide and who has worked with the shamans in Peru and all of that, and she just was like, she said they had a show that night. I'm like, oh, I can't. I'm going to go to Tahoe. My girlfriend lives up there, and she's like, for select people, we've been wanting to get into Tahoe. We also offer a ayahuasca ceremony. And I'm like, what? Take my money right now. and they're just like, whoa. There's a vetting process. We need to make sure that you're not crazy, schizophrenic, or like just like, a wacko. And so after that, I had to send them a deposit, cash only. Actually, it was through the postal service. So it was like a money order. Once I mailed that to them, then I got a letter from them, or an email back. And in that email, it was just this long description of everything that I needed to know and to do. So I was fasting, all the foods to avoid, like avocados, things that are too ripe, no beer, no anything fermented, no meat, and abstain from sex, and just all these things. And then the day of, stop eating after I think they said 1 o'clock. I stopped eating after 10 a.m. And then no more water after 4 p.m. And the ceremony went from 7 to like 2:33 in the morning. And so you're fasting this entire time so that the medicine can be absorbed as much as possible. And that's the part. And
was this just you, or was there a group of people with you?
There was a group of people.
Like how many?
There was 8 people the first night, and the second night they had 4 of us stayed, so 4 new people came and rotated through. And it was a beautiful experience. So the way that they do it, I've never sat with anybody else, since this is how they do it. They're very much into the medicine helping you to get whatever it is you need. So before it starts, we all agree that there's no talking and that there's no touching, and that if you need to cry, that's fine. You can cry. If you need to laugh, that's fine. Go ahead and laugh. And we all have our small little containers, these little little buckets, because you're going to purge. And so when that happens, it's just let it happen. And they just explain how it went, and then they lead you through. They play their own music. It's beautiful music, and their songs really are the guides. Like they'll just take you down where you need to go. It's done at night. It's done very little lights, almost no lights at all. So the way the ceremony goes is you take your first cup. They call it. So everyone has their first cup, and you set your intention. Like, what is it you're trying to learn? Like, what is it you need to focus on or work on or whatever it is? So you set your intention, and you share that intention with everyone, and then you all drink. And then it's lights out. It's completely dark for at least an hour. So they're allowing the medicine to be integrated, and there's nothing. And then about an hour into it, they have these Himalayan bowls, the singing bowls, and they have other like therapeutic sound devices that they use. And so they'll start that process, and you're just like, the medicine's just starting to grab, and you're just like, whoa. And these songs or the sounds are taking you to a whole new place. And it's just, you're riding like this wave, basically.
Are you seeing geometric patterns?
I saw,
closing your eyes?
Oh, my eyes were closed for most of the time. Yeah, I saw geometric patterns, sacred geometry, and it was so...
Have you never seen that before? Like,
never.
So vivid.
So beautiful. Yeah, so my experience was I had these 2 rainbow snakes, and these rainbow snakes were racing. And as they were racing, they were forming all these shapes and just kept getting bigger and bigger. And like, it's like the expanse of the universe. I'm like, oh. Like I was losing my mind. Like it felt like I was just like, oh my God. And then like I'd open my eyes and it'd go away, and I close my eyes again, and then like I could see it just keep expanding. These snakes were just racing, making all these beautiful designs, and it was all like rainbow colors. And I'm like, holy shit. And I guess that's a universal experience people experience, is these geometric shapes that are like psychedelically
what is
rainbow.
What do you think they are? That's what I always try to like. Is that like is that a portal that's opening us up to go to a different dimension?
I honestly don't know. Yeah, but it was beautiful and it was so peaceful. And I was like, and it, like as I sat there, I might have been laying. It felt like the world was just fading away, and just the universe was expanding, just like opening it up to me. And I was like, wow, like it was beautiful, man.
And then, so you said this is like a 6-hour ceremony, right?
Yeah. So you're just going through that, and I'm purging. And so the first night I purged a lot. I think I threw up like 4 or 5 times. I had four glasses, I had 3 full glasses. So I had 3 the first night, and a lot of trauma. Not really trauma, a lot of things that I failed to realize. So when I left my wife and my children, I left them in end of February. I just kind of like about faced and walked away. Like that was it. And this particular ceremony like brought up just the pain that my wife and kids were feeling. We had just bought a brand new house. So there's this huge empty home, and Dad's no longer there. And like, it was like, oh, it was gut wrenching. Like I was crying. Like I was really just like dealing with it. Like I was feeling their pain, like the emptiness, the sorrow. And I was like, shit, like I hadn't thought of it or was willing to address it. Like, and it came up, and I'm like, okay, let's deal with this. And so it was really beautiful, because once I dealt with the pain that I had caused them, I was able to see the love that was there. And I realized, I'm like, shit, I still love my wife. I love her differently, but I still love her. Like she's a beautiful woman. And the medicine pointed this out to me. It was like, cause I do custody a little bit different. I have my kids every other weekend. And then, cause I have 5 kids, over a 2-week span. So 1 week I'll have 3 of them one-on-one a night. And then, the following week I'll have 2 of them, like just one night, and then the other one the other night. And it didn't dawn on me that their mom would make my son or daughter's lunch, make sure they had their clothes packed, their teeth, toothbrushes, everything they needed. So they had a separate overnight bag, and they had their school bag ready for the very next day. Like she did all of this stuff to make sure that they had a good experience with Dad. I'm like, she doesn't have to do that. Like that's above and beyond. And I realized, I'm like, shit, she really does love these kids and wants them to have the best experience that they can with their dad during probably the most emotionally challenging time of her life, as her husband has just left and is moving on to a different chapter, a different lifestyle. She is still doing right by these kids. And I hadn't seen that. And this is like, we're on like 6 months now of doing this. And this medicine like pointed out, like, look at what she's doing. Like, acknowledge the good that's in her. And I did. And it's brought us closer together as co-parents. And I'm just like, man, I had to go through a lot of pain to get to that realization that she's a good woman. She's a good mom. She's a really good mom.
How many cups did you take of the ayahuasca?
The first night, 3 cups.
3 cups.
The second night, 3.
How long did it, after each cup, did you purge immediately, or did it take?
So the first night.
Or did you have a vision after, or how did that whole?
Yeah, so the first night, I'm like, this isn't working. I'm like, this isn't working at all. I'm just like sitting there. So
how long did it take for the geometric patterns and everything to show up?
So I took the second. So I'm into probably 90 minutes. So the first cup, nothing happens. I take the second cup, And then almost immediately after the second cup, I'm like, "Wah!" It's like, shit, that one didn't take. And then I'm seeing like these geometric,
After you
purge. And they gave us a hint. He's like, look, if you feel like you're going to purge, drink some water, like a lot of water, and let it happen really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then the girl who's sitting next to me, she's from Brazil, and she sat, I think she said 19 times, is I think what she said, because she grew up in the rainforest. And she's like, no, sit with the uncomfortable feeling for at least 45 minutes. Let the medicine absorb. You don't want to lose the medicine immediately. And so I'm like, oh, okay. At the same time, you don't want to be uncomfortable, but at the same time, you don't want to lose the feeling. So yeah, so the second time, so my second cup, I'm like, I purged. And then I started seeing like all these visions, and it was, and during, as I'm having these visions of like these geometric shapes and like this sacred geometry, is when I'm also having like these ideas float into my mind. Like, have you considered this about your family and this? And I'm like, oh, okay. Like there's like, they're bubbling to the surface. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And every time, like, it's like, if it's a bubble, it pops. It's like, here's this. And then the next one will pop and like, here's this. And I'm like, okay, let's face it. And I can either choose to face it, or I can ignore it. And I just chose to face everything. I was just like, be as courageous as I can. And
so what are some you said about your acknowledging your wife and just the love and compassion she has for your kids? What an amazing wife she is. Mother more than wife. Yeah. What else? What other trauma did you resolve? Other trauma, childhood trauma or anything?
Nothing childhood related at all. I think I've worked on myself pretty good. But one of the issues I was having is with my girlfriend. We've gone from monogamous to an open relationship to now we're monogamous again. And I'm like, shit, this is really kind of difficult because it was my choice to become monogamous because I'm like, oh, this is what she wants. I'm gonna give her what she wants, kind of thing. And I also wanted to grow closer to her too, because I could feel like she was really hurting with some of the things some of the relationships that I was developing with other people. I could tell it was hurting her, and I really wanted to focus on her because I love her. Like, I think she's like my special person. And in fact, I gave her a ring. We're engaged. So everyone's like, what the fuck? Like, you're not even divorced. How can you be engaged? So anyway, I chose to do this. And so like the challenge I'm having is I'm going to the river. I'm meeting beautiful people, and they're like, so what do you do? I'm like, I'm a sexual healer. And I'm like, they're like, well, how do you do this? I'm like, shit, how do I do this? Because I'm now monogamous. And so this was the challenge that I was bringing to the ceremony, was like, help me. How do I navigate these waters where I don't want to flirt with open relationship, because she has a lot of personal stuff that's going on in her life right now that to add that on top of it was just too much. But I'm like, how can I do this? Like, what's the proper path for me to follow to explore and to use my sexual healing, but still keep the integrity of the relationship going? And kid you not, man, this is exactly what the medicine brought me. So the medicine showed me. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, like asking like these questions, And I see myself like don put on like this doctor's like lab coat. Like I'm wearing this white coat. I'm a doctor now, and I'm going into to see somebody, and I see them. I give them a treatment, and then I leave. And the medicine says, you are just like a doctor. You perform your treatment, and then you leave, and you still go home to your family. This is what doctors do. They meet with different patients each day, and they still go home and they have a wife and kids. And I'm like, holy shit. So anyway, I presented this information to my girlfriend, or my fiance, I guess. I'm like, yeah, this is what I think I'm doing. And she's like, that's beautiful. That's fantastic. She's like, I totally can see that. Like, you could definitely do this. She's like, the problem I've been having is that you've been doing this in other people's homes or in our bed at your place.
Oh, so the church.
Yes.
Okay.
So we just bought a building. Sense. So we built a church, and in the basement is where the sexual healing is going to take place. And she's like,
therapy, yep.
Yeah. And she's like, fuck. She's like, I can get around this idea of you becoming like a legitimate professional. Like you're becoming legitimate rather than like, I'm going to do these house calls, And I was like, great. It's so crazy. The medicine brought me the answer. I shared the answer with her, and she accepted it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is brilliant. And
to me, not me, I can relate to this easily just because I have an open mind, and I can see that whole view. But to other people who are super critical, super conservative, super judging, right? People are going to be like, that all sounds made up, right? Like,
Right.
and that's some medicine that's existed for thousands of years, that's been in the Amazon, that causes tremendous change, is giving you these answers and telling you.
I got so many more answers, man. Yeah, it was beautiful though. Like that was like one of my main issues. And then yeah. And it's so funny because like yesterday I was at the river, now knowing that this is the direction that I'm going. And I met with a woman from Argentina, and she's like, "So what do you do?" And I told her, I'm a sexual healer. She's like, I need to talk to you. I have some trauma in the past that I actually need it, like around sex, that I need to like have someone like walk me through. And I'm like, well, I'm very hands-on. I believe you're one orgasm away from changing your entire life and your future. And you just need to have it done right. And she's like, yes, please. When can we do this? I'm like, well, my church isn't set up yet.
So soon.
Yeah.
You need a business card and everything.
Right? I know, but like, here's my business card.
Set up an appointment.
But it's beautiful because now that I'm embracing it and I have the support from, you know, in my partner in my personal life, that these doors are just opening up, and I'm just putting it, my pathways is like, I'm being put in front of people that are in need of what I have to offer. And I honestly believe that I wouldn't be down this path if it wouldn't have been for the medicine, because I was going a completely different direction. I was like, you know, and the medicine's like, no, this is what is needed. This is who you are, and this is what you can offer to people. So
was there more visions? Was there more answers the first night?
Not the first night, no. That was. It felt like that. All of that happened in a very condensed period of time, but it must have been over 3 hours. Yeah, because like you. So
after ceremony, did you guys share? Did you guys stay somewhere close?
Yeah, so we stay on the property.
Okay.
So after the ceremony, we actually have the first night was a fire ceremony. So we went outside. We had a fire ceremony, and we got to throw a couple of cedar seeds on the fire as we basically say a prayer for those who during the trauma that we were resolving, who we feel could use healing. And so we gave, you know, it was a nice prayer that we said. And then afterwards, it's over. When it's over, then you can like talk to people and stuff like that. And so we cut fresh fruit because we're all fasting, you know. So we cut fresh fruit and just sitting there just talking. It was a great just experience.
Was everyone talking about what they?
Some people were, but the following day was integration.
Okay.
So we all go to sleep, and then the next morning we do breath work, sound healing, and then we have integration. And integration is where everyone's like shares everything or nothing. It depends on what they want to share.
Did you hear like any interesting stories that were like, whoa?
I heard this one. Yeah, she's like this one girl, and this was her second time. She's like, yeah, Mother Aya came to me and she held my hand and she walked me through some of my trauma. She's like, I didn't want to see it, and she like held my hand so I could walk through it and I would be safe. And I'm like, well, that's cool, you know. I mean, and she like she cried really hard like during some of her stuff. And the cool thing about it is you don't know what's going on inside the other people's minds. Like they're crying. It's very private and it's very like safe, I would say. No, I didn't hear anything that like blew my mind. Like, oh my God. Other people that I've talked to have like had experiences. Their experiences are way different. Their visions are like totally crazy.
So, your second night, going into it, how did you feel compared to the first night? So
I knew what was going to happen. Like I'm like, oh, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to purge. And
you didn't get any anxiety because you know how.
No.
I don't know if you've ever drank too much or whatever, and then you
once when I was like 16.
You know how you don't want to puke and stuff?
Yeah.
You know, it's nothing like that. You're just like, all right.
No, because so here's the thing. Like I knew it was going to happen. I'm like, oh, I'm going to puke. So I drank as much water as I could to purge. The second night, my body didn't purge. My body accepted the medicine. I had 3 glasses again. I wanted a 4th one. I actually went outside to go pee. I guess they had made the last call and I didn't hear, so I missed out on that. But it was a blissful feeling. Like it was probably the sweetest feeling I had ever had in my life. I was outside taking a leak and I'm just like, in the sun and like in the moonlight, I'm just like loving on life and just like these just feelings of just love and joy and just like everyone was just like, I wanted to like hug everybody. Like I was very like amoroso. I was like, hello, but you can't touch anybody there. You know, I'm like, shit. But it was like, I just had this feeling of love. Like I just wanted to heal the world. I had some really, really interesting visions that night. that have changed my outlook on life, actually. So that night I didn't purge, but I went into it wanting to know like specific questions about like just life in general. Like, I come from Mormonism's a very orthodox, hierarchical religion where there's a lot of authority, a lot of rules, a lot of things you can't do. And I was just like, I was asking questions about like, what is real and what isn't real in life? Because, you have these certain religions say that we are the true religion, or you have certain like, countries that says we are the correct country. Like, we're not the bad guys. They are the bad guys. That's why we're attacking them. And so you have all these different things. And so some of the meanings, some of the things that I got in this were, one of them was that there is no meaning other than the meaning you give something. That's it. Everything exists
because you believe it, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, so everything exists. It doesn't exist or it doesn't have meaning until you actually acknowledge it and give something meaning. Like it could just be there. Like, for example, there's a broken rubber band on this table here. And now just want to, focus your attention on that rubber band. It means nothing unless it'd be like, oh, that rubber band, that was my grandmother's. And the night that she died, we broke it and we haven't moved it since. Like now it has meaning or something like that. It's like, holy shit, like that's an important rubber band. But other than that, it's just a rubber band. But if you can put meaning behind something, and this is what people do with like sacred objects, religion, like everything, they put these meanings. And if you have enough people that believe it and follow behind it, they're like, oh, this is real. This is now truth. And what this showed me was like, there's no meaning other than the meaning you give it. And it showed me the world. And then it showed the world like all these different layers. And each layer was just a set of rules that you as a society, we agree to. And if we agreed to that rule, then we can put another rule on top of it. We can all agree to those rules. So you have like a government, you have the schools, you have work, you have family. There's all these rules and they only work if you agree to them. If you don't agree to them, then they're not your rules. And you're free if you don't believe those rules.
So prior to all this stuff, because I already know that you were already, do you still consider yourself Mormon or not anymore ever since?
I got kicked out.
You got kicked out?
They officially kicked me out.
All right.
Yeah, it's called excommunication. They gave me the boot.
Did you feel any guilt or anything bad about not? No?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel the same way now.
I'm actually freer.
Freer?
A lot freer. Because like they had the option to do like a 1-year probation and basically call me back in a year to see if I still wanted like to participate in things like that. And the reason why I'm sharing this, and so they had that option to give me a year or to just completely just kick me out completely. Like, you don't belong here. You don't believe in Jesus. You're out, And it's funny because I gave this guy, the guy who was in charge, he's a fisherman. I gave him this analogy because when you have a fish that's kind of fighting you, you want to strip the line out, but keep the hook inside to make it think that, oh, this fish is like, I'm free, And so you strip the line. And then when it gets far enough away, you yank it and like, I still got you. And I mentioned this. I'm like, you could strip the line right now and I can come back in a year and you can still leave the hook in there and you got me. And I may have changed my mind or something, something may have happened, or you can just cut bait right now and let me go. And they cut me bait. They cut me loose. And I was like, that's very freeing. But I was like, it's actually really good because I would have been looking over my shoulder like, or looking at my watch like, I got 6 more months before I got to meet with these guys again. And that's no way to live, man. And so it was the best thing that they possibly could have done is to have just cut me loose. And I immediately jumped into ayahuasca. The sexual healing has taken off. And I'm like, shit, I would not be doing these things right now. I would have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And it was what I needed. Mm-hmm. But the reason I brought this up was because my son, in the Mormon community, when your son turns 8, you as a father, you have the right to baptize your son, because the church gives you this right. They give you this privilege. Well, I'm not quote unquote worthy to do that, and that was one of the questions I was asking. I'm like, what is this whole thing about worthiness and like, be given permission to like baptize my son or whatnot? And that's when the whole rules thing came. Was like the only reason why it works in that community is because everyone believes it to be true, that they are quote unquote God's true church, and therefore only these select people can do a true baptism, and you're no longer part of it. So, and I'm like, I don't believe that shit. And that was what it was teaching me, was that there's so many rules and there's so many things in society that we think are true and real that really aren't.
It's a form of control.
It's a form of control, and it's a social construct. If enough people believe it, then it must be true. Take time, for example. Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We all agree that this is what it is, except for the Jews. The Jews have their own calendar. Well, the Chinese do too. Chinese New Year, they have their, they're different calendars. But for the most part, everyone agrees to like the calendar that we live by, this Roman Greco calendar. It's just a construct. And we agree that, there's 24 hours in a day, and that there's 365 days in a year, and there's all this shit. And I remember thinking this. I'm like, wait a minute. If there's 12 months, why can't it just be like 6 months or 4 months? Well, if you have 12 months, then you're paying your utilities 12 months. You're paying a mortgage 12 months. It's all this. How can I get more money from you? And it's like all these rules. And I was like, oh my God, like it really like deconstructed. Of course, we have to live in this world, but when you recognize that these rules they only apply to you if you choose for them to apply to you, you can live so much freer and happier.
100% agree with everything that you're saying, because
it just blew my mind, man.
Like, I know you don't work for anyone. You're kind of independent now. You do your own thing. And I just started working for someone. I mean, I feel very fortunate to be there. I don't see myself being there for a long time. I have great benefits. I have a 401k, all which are a trap, right?
Right.
It's a trap because you're paying taxes.
Yes.
Right. The more money you make, the more money they're taking away. I have a buddy who's a principal in Campbell. He makes $190K a year. Mm-hmm. How much do you think he takes home?
Probably like 108.
90.
Oh, $100,000 in taxes?
Yeah.
And perks and all that shit. We get some write-offs. So my girlfriend, she's a nurse, right? She makes $180 a year, and she's broke.
I know,
broke as fuck.
I hear this all the. That's why people are so angry and stuff. Right?
I'm like, how the hell can you? I mean, her gross paycheck is $1,300 or $13,000 a month. I'm like, how can you fucking be broke? Like, I mean, like, I love what I do, I'm not gonna complain.
But we all feel like if we're in that corporate world, that there's no other way, right? Like if I go by it alone, if I do this, it's risky, right?
Yeah,
I know. And you're always thinking about the what ifs, right? And everyone does that. Yeah. Everyone does that, and that's why I've always like wanted to promote people to start a small business. Don't copy what the fuck everyone else is doing. Do something. We all like you. Right?
Yeah, have a topless talk show.
No, you're going to be a sexual healer.
Yeah.
Who's ever heard of that?
Right?
No one. But that's your own journey. That's your path. Everyone, every single one of us.
I've had so many like.
Every single one. We all have our own path.
We all do.
But we're all afraid.
We all have that light inside.
Well, I honestly believe that we're not separate of God. We are part of God. God is us.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is what we believe and what we create. And if we're always around negative people telling us that you can't do this, you're gonna be
stuck in that, man.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what I believe as well. Like God is just experiencing life through us, and it's so crazy because like you really do create your thoughts. Like you create your reality. Like that's the one true like power in life is creation. And we do that with our thoughts. It's crazy if you think about this. Like this whole world right here, it's just a projection in someone else's in God's mind.
I know.
Like we don't even really we're not really here. It's just a projection, man.
True. I know. But we're not going to be able to repeat it, right? This is it. This is the one time, the little, point of your nail, point in history, because we're part of infinity.
Yeah.
Maybe we're balls of energy,
recycled or whatever. It's just him experiencing it through us, man.
But maybe in reality, we're little balls of energy, right? That never die, that never suffer. And we come here to experience.
It's so funny you say that, dude. So that's another one of my visions that I had. So I tried to kill myself in this thing, like in my mind, of course. Like I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm gonna annihilate. That's it. Yeah, annihilate myself. Like I'm like, so I tried to like just set myself on fire and just melt myself.
Okay, hold on. Let me before he continues. I've heard of a lot of people taking ayahuasca and having ego deaths, right?
Okay, yeah.
So they say a lot of people have they experience where they envision different ways they're going to die. Like this one guy envisioned riding down a slope of pines and all the pines ripped out his genitals. And, like the most horrific way of dying, but he just had to accept it, right? Like snakes crawling in and out of his eyeballs, and then like he was like, okay, I guess
your
like,
neighbors have been next door, like, what the hell is happening over there?
But did you think you were, or was it just kind of happening? Like,
no, I wanted to do it.
Okay.
No, it was very conscious. I was like, you know what? Where am I at? Where is me? The me in me. So I'm like I set myself on fire and like melted my body, and I'm like, shit, I'm still here. Then I cut myself open, trying to like get to the core of like this core being of like who I am. And I'm like, shit, my body's destroyed, but I'm still here. And every which way I tried to destroy myself, I continued to exist. And the message came across that said, you are not your body. And I'm like, oh God. And then the following message was, they can hurt your body, but they can never hurt you. You're eternal. And I was like, oh my God. Holy shit. Like, I'm an eternal being. And then the next message was, and so is everybody else. Treat them as such. And I was like, oh, I started crying and all this. I'm like, this is a beautiful message. Like it totally just like taught me in a moment, shit.
What reality is. Right? What it is, like,
exactly. I'm going to continue. We're energy, and we're going to continue. After this body's gone, we're going to continue. And how we treat these other people is really like, that's the most important thing, because they're going to continue as well.
You know, because I think if we come to the conclusion that we're all the same, just living different lives, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, this person over here makes X amount of money, but is, you know, traumatized and like doesn't value what they have or didn't work for it, so they don't appreciate it, right? They have entitlement. If you can look at it through their lens, then you can understand it, mm-hmm. and be like, if I was in their shoes, I'd be the exact same way. Right. You know, sometimes we want to judge people and say, if I was over there, I wouldn't do that. Yeah. But we would probably do the exact same thing. And I think we have to come to that conclusion.
You got to give them that grace. Yeah.
We have to come to that understanding that like homelessness and all that, like, who knows what they're going through, you know? And I think that's a great way to look at, there's universal truths, right? Yeah. Because look at how the Bible says God created us in the image of him, not as a human form, right? Yeah. But he's eternal light. Like, because I've heard of people experiencing life as God, as consciousness, as nothing existed, then the Big Bang, then, you know, imagine you being God and having consciousness, right? What's the first feeling you think you're going to feel? Of just having consciousness and knowing you're alive in this void.
Alone?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's like, we felt those, even though, you know, we have brothers and families and everything.
Right.
We felt those moments of loneliness. But can you imagine? And I think that's why this is like an illusion, right? Oh, totally. God has split itself into us.
Oh, yeah.
And we get to, and it's up to us to make our life a reality. Either
you can create it,
make it hell or heaven. It's up to us.
Yeah, hell or heaven is concepts of the mind. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of the law of one?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So like, started diving deep into the law of one, and it's basically that same concept where you have the you know, God at the center, the core, and then he goes and he creates a universe, and in that universe you have you know, galaxies, and in that galaxies you have different like solar systems, and like our solar system we have a sun. And, you know, this is God being so far removed. So you have like the universe, the solar system, or the galaxy, the solar system. Now you have the sun, and then you have a planet. And then on the planet, you have, you know, vegetation and plants. And then you have animals, and then you have humans. And like, he's so far removed. So by the time that we become this entity of who we are, there's this veil that we can't remember anything. And then we have this ego that's just an illusion. Ego is just nothing more than, it's an illusion. Because once you, like you said, you kill it, it goes away. Or it's like, if it's a filter that we see things through, but we're so far removed that we don't even remember that we're God, that he's us and we're him.
Yeah, it's well,
which is a beautiful simulation, because now you're like, you know, you're in a game, like a video game, and you're just like, and you don't realize you're the one controlling it. You're like, you like think you're alive. You're like, you're free guy. You know, you're Ryan Reynolds running around trying to like save the world.
But I think that's an important thing to discover this, like at our age, because we've already experienced everything we didn't want to experience, or we lived the life we thought we had to live, and this was.
I want to share it with my kids.
I know. I think the same way, but I think it's hard because like my daughter goes to Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about stuff, and like her dog recently died. You know, well, last year they had to put him down.
Sorry to hear that, man.
And she would and a lot of people talk about that. If you get a dog for your kids, just know that he's gonna die, and they're gonna experience that.
My girlfriend's dog died last night.
Yeah,
and it was rough. Oh, I think I mentioned. Yeah. So
and that you know, it's a traumatic event. But she was asking like, when am I gonna meet him again? I'm like, well, I don't know if you will. Like,
who knows, man?
You probably never will.
Well, in the law of one, if you subscribe to that basically, you know, dogs keep on reincarnating, or animals keep on reincarnating until they become so conscious. Like, because dogs are very empathetic sometimes. Like, they're almost like humans, you know, that they become elevated in that sphere, in that capacity, that they're like, okay, they cannot be, you know, a dog anymore, and they go on to the next evolution, which might be a human or something like that.
Interesting.
Have you ever seen the movie How to Drive in the Rain?
No.
Or it's a really good movie. It's about a dog and a race car driver. And the dog says when he comes back he wants to be a race car driver. And the dog dies, and then later you see at the end of the movie that he comes back as a little kid who wants to be a race car driver.
Yeah, no, you know, I love this way of thinking, of like looking at things differently, because we all believe. I mean, I don't know why people choose religion. Maybe they choose it to simplify their life and make it easier for them.
Well, I mean,
because life is hard.
It is hard, but you've read if you've read like the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, we don't choose that. Like in most cases, like you're born into a family. You are going to be espoused to your parents' political views, their religious views. I mean, you don't even choose your own name, for crying out loud. Like, my name is Ryan, and I had no choice on that. My parents named me Ryan. And so like a lot of these things are just like, you're kind of forced into the matrix, if you will. And you have to either choose to wake up or just go along with the program until the end. And I think that religion is almost like a pacifier. It just numbs people to the fact that, like, you know, you suck on a pacifier and you think you're getting nutrients, and you're not. It's a mind fuck. Like, you're like suck, and you could do that until you die, and like it doesn't fill the soul. And then, you know, you can go do something like ayahuasca, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit! Like,
everything gets revealed to you.
Yeah, and like one like, it was the closest I've ever felt to God in one night, compared to the 42 years of my life in religion. And it's just the craziest thing. You know, it's just funny. I recently read a book called I think it's called the mystery of the unknown religion. And it talks about all these ancient, from the Egyptians to the Greeks, to the Romans, to the Druids in England, all this stuff. They all had these rituals where they had either beer or wine as part of their ceremonies, and it was always a psychedelic wine. And
I think that was ergot. There was a guy, I think from Harvard, who wrote a study about it.
Yes.
In Greek, like they were tripping. It was some kind of
from Elias or Eleusis or something like that.
Yeah, there was some kind of fermented drink that they were taking.
So this guy just wrote this other book, and it's piggybacked on that. And he went into the Vatican archives, and he found the actual. So this is where the whole, like, it was women that were brewing it, and this is where the whole witch hunt came from, because the women were given this psychedelic wine, calling it the Eucharist, saying like, this is Christ's sacrament, and the church is like, oh, we can't do this, because people were having these like visions and they're seeing God and all this stuff, and then like they're like, no, you need a priest. And it was amazing, because I'm like, shit, like this is like the real religion that people were doing. Like, you know, at Plato and Aristotle, they're going to these different places and they're taking this wine and they're seeing amazing things and coming back and sharing it.
Yeah.
Imagine what the world would be like if this stuff wasn't outlawed.
Well, I think honestly, maybe what has been happening, there's been world disasters that have brought humanity to its brink.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know what your thought is on Atlantis and stuff. Like, there's a lot of theories. There's this author, I forget his name, but he believes that there was a super intelligent civilization in Atlantis that helped all these other civilizations build pyramids and everything. And there's this guy called Matias de Stefano from Argentina that says he remembers all his previous lives.
Oh, what a beautiful thing.
And he even talks about what life was in Egypt.
Oh, wow.
That he was part of it, and that he was a woman in that civilization. And just like when he was a kid, he was having visions of that reality and missing everyone from that time, and he wasn't sure what was real, if it was here or
That's
there.
crazy.
He eventually had to take, he had like guides all his life telling him, you have to go take ayahuasca because you're separating from what we need we need you to do something here. Like this is, and he didn't want to do it, right? Because he's like, this is too much. Like,
yeah.
In a lot of terms, that could be considered a schizophrenic, right?
Yeah.
That he's seeing things that aren't there. And he was talking, there's a whole series on him. He has like 6 volumes, 6 seasons on Gaia in inside Amazon.
Yeah.
Man, it's so complicated. He talks about, I don't know if there's 12 dimensions or something, like the real reality, but it's so much, it's like, it's overwhelming. Like there's so much information.
Yeah.
But I think the real interesting stuff is when he lived in Egypt, I think the society, he would call it Kem, that there were priestesses who would be forced to wed certain people. People were connected to certain elements, water, wind,
earth and fire.
Yeah. And all of them were that's how they created pyramids, because a lot of technology, they have no idea how they could move, but they were using it with their mind, right? They were moving stuff with their mind, like things that we could never believe or say that's impossible.
Yeah.
But science can't duplicate it. Or
it's interesting because I was watching some Gaia and they were talking about how they how we just believe in nature is just like, that's what nature is. But the Egyptians, there was the mind, and then there was nature, and the mind was controlling nature. And they're talking like how they could like control the wind and control the waters, the waves, and all that stuff. I'm like, what the hell? Like it was like crazy stuff. And then they deviate a little bit and like, well, how do you think Moses parted the Red Sea? You know?
But I think, like you said, we're programmed and we're said to believe that we're not part of God and we're not.
Yeah.
But I think that's, if you believe it from early age, then you're stuck. You have to believe it down to your molecule.
Yeah.
That this is, but I mean, really, and I think that's really difficult, right? And he even said we're not in the age of building pyramids. We're in the age of the internet, and the internet's going to transform everything. Like, oh man, communication, right?
Yeah.
Like, think about it. Like, how many poor people in Africa and other countries who don't have bank accounts, and crypto? How crypto?
Yeah.
A safe, secure network that you can't be.
You can't hack, you can't duplicate, you can't do all that stuff.
You can't censor, right? Because right now, if you talk about things that they don't want you to be talking about, you get kicked off of YouTube. You can't really be
Facebook jail and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of censorship.
There is.
And I think crypto and the Web 3.0, all of that, decentralization is going to help humanity.
To really like just project this stuff and go. It's interesting because when you look at like the powers that be, if you will, like so much of our history has been lost. So there's this guy I follow on Instagram, and he talks about like he the mud flood is what he talks about. He goes back and he has all these pictures of what like places used to look like, the beautiful artifact, like edifices, like all these buildings and how they were constructed in the 1800s and 1700s. He's like, we had technology that they don't want us to realize that they had back then. Like it's completely lost. They want to like just dumb it down. Like, oh, they just had a chisel and a hammer, and this is how they did it. Like they sat there and like chiseled all this stuff. You're like, there's no way that they did this. And like their technology was amazing, and we've lost it. And then he shows pictures of all these zeppelins flying to the top of buildings, and these are actual like real documented pictures. And people are getting off, and they're coming and they're going, and they used to transport, like people used to fly around on zeppelins before they had airplanes. And this is crazy. Like the top of these buildings and some of these old bridges, they would just dock people, and then there's like an elevator, and they go down and they just do what they need to do. And people like, there's zeppelins everywhere. And I was like, what the hell happened? Like they're not there anymore, but like this was like part of our past that's been completely whitewashed and just completely destroyed. Like, oh no, we don't want that. There's only airlines, and there's only 4 companies that you can choose from.
Well, one thing that I like to tell people, because people, and we might be coming into like a real dark time, recession, depression, one of the worst ones that might come from inflation, from all the money that the federal government has printed, the federal bank.
Do you follow Nasara Jasara?
No.
Okay.
But what I want to say is, if everything was perfect, right? If we already lived in that kind of utopian future that can happen, then what is the point of any kind of struggle, or to create anything, or to make anything, or to help? I think that's a beautiful part of being in something difficult, is we can cause change by just living our fullest self. We don't have to become superheroes or nothing of that nature. Just believe that what we're doing is correct by how we feel what we're doing, like deep in our hearts.
So I asked this lady that she grew up in the Amazon what it was like. And she said, unfortunately, because poverty was there was so much poverty there that it was really difficult, and she had her parents had to escape. But growing up as a kid there, everything was like, it was like a commune. Everything was freely shared, including your spouse. Like everything was like freely shared. But she said, as a kid, like there was no entitlement. There was no like oh, that's mine. It was just like you just shared and shared alike. And it was amazing because she said the connectivity with people, with humans, was like you just saw the other person as yourself. And like, sure, I'll share this with you because you're my brother. Yeah, I'll share this with you because you're my sister. And I mean, you have like sibling rivalries and stuff like that, but not like to an extent where like I guess there weren't even really rivalries. She was saying is just that like personalities get jealous and stuff like that. But she said for the most part, like it was a very loving environment where everyone was just like freely giving.
It was a community.
Yeah.
What's missing right now.
It totally is what's missing. And she said she attributed to the medicine. She's like, the medicine is what, brings this about with people, that they face whatever problems they're facing. And then when they're done and they're healed, they have this intense desire just to love everybody purely.
And you know what? Another thing is in this reality, there's duality. So let's take Hitler for an example. That was a really bad person who did all these horrible things. Jesus also existed. Jesus is a kind of, I don't think he's what like the Catholic Church and everything describes. I think he reached that level of consciousness of love, right? That he was able to do whatever he believed. Like he was just existing, being in the moment, right? Not overanalyzing, not like kind of like the Buddha, right?
Yeah.
To be the end of suffering. And so, if when you have a Jesus, you're going to have a counter to that. You're going to have
a Satan, a Lucifer,
something like that in this reality. But that's part of duality, though.
A physical.
You can't have this reality without.
Well, there's opposition in all things. I mean, that's a universal law, that there's polarity.
Yeah.
It's positive and negative. It's funny because people talk about love and like hate, and like, no, those are actually not opposites. Apathy is the opposite of love, just not caring anymore. And it's like when you stop caring, then you're like you're not loving anymore. It's like but you're right though. Like there is this duality. But at the same time, like you can use this duality to your advantage. You can make this duality turn into a positive. So, for example, like if this is a recession, so this is the beautiful thing about it. Like inside every problem is the answer or the solution. There's always
there's always the
opposite. Yeah, that's your answer. So whatever the problem is, the problem, like it's like the Stoicism, like the struggle is the way, or like the problem that you're facing is the answer. Yeah. Like face it. Don't run away from it. Like face it. And this is what the medicine does, is it causes you to face the problems and challenges you're avoiding. And then like you heal yourself. So if, for example, in a recession, you're like, oh my God, the world's going to end. The stock market's the worst crash we've ever had. Well, there's also your opportunity as well. And that's, I think, why, there's a famous quote that when there's blood on the streets, that's where you're going to make your money, is because, yeah, it's true, because when people are fearing, then you can also go ahead and you can, take advantage of it, but in a positive way. And I look at that also in like the scope of work that I'm doing with people. So people come to me, they're like, I have this sexual trauma. And I'm like, okay, great. What is it? And they'll tell me, I'm like, that's also your solution. Like whatever it is that is the problem is also the answer that you need to face. And it's when you look at things like in that perspective, like this duality aspect, it becomes very simple. You're like, you don't have to really think about it. You're like, okay, I know whatever the problem is, it's also the answer too. So we're going to go ahead and move forward working in that direction, because they give you their answer basically.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great topic that we're able to talk about. I love the fact that that you were able to take ayahuasca. It's something I've been wanting to take since 2014. I feel like
that long?
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, that's the first time I really heard Amber Lyon, who was a CNN reporter.
Oh, okay.
She took all kinds of different ones, and one of the real ones that like captured my attention was this being came to her and told her, "You guys are part of a bigger plan. We brought DNA from different galaxies, mixed it with yours, and you're part of this bigger plan for humanity." And I was like, and your Rogan was like, "Wait, who? What plan?" Like, I don't know. Like,
yeah.
was explaining that. And then that was in 2014, and this guy who remembers his past, talks about aliens coming here and mixing with
and
our
seeding.
DNA. Because I think we were the only species that could retain their DNA to keep this like human form alive.
Interesting.
And I mean, think about that. Think about if like everything that we believed isn't true, and it's way more complicated, and more complexity and all these like things that you think are in a movie, but it's real life. Like, and we're part of it.
It's the truth. Well, it's interesting because there's these people that that certain parts of the Bible that there were these, you can call them aliens, but these basically these supernatural beings. They call them sons of God, that they came down and mixed with like mortal women, and they had this super seed, and that they were like 10 feet tall, and they were just doing all these amazing things. And then God needed to wipe the earth from the super seed, and that's why they had the flood with Noah and all that stuff. Like, it's crazy how like,
well, a lot of them died because you know how they said there's global warming, that the world has gone through extreme cold, there's extreme heat, that there was even like some kind of like lizard being that lived here at one point, like millions and millions of years ago. And that this lizard being was the one that taught the indigenous people ceremony and psychedelics.
Well, I thank you very much, Lizard Bean.
I know it sounds crazy. I know that whole.
I don't care how it came about. I'm grateful that it's here.
Yeah. But it's just, I don't know. To me, things like that are just like intriguing.
Like, same here. Like, I'm like, well, what? I mean, I'm at a point now. Like, I was so dogmatic. I was so narrow focused, and like, no. The world was only made in 6 days, and God did it.
Yeah, I believe that too.
Yeah. And like, I was just so like stuck in my ways, and like, there's so much like scientific fact. Like, this world has existed for millions of years, man. I mean, there's cave drawings of like, you know, people from 30,000 years ago in like the caves of France and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, that's and there's like different like, you know, structures of the human brain or human, like the skeleton as it evolved over time, and it's like, okay, so it's very difficult for me, it was to like be so literal of the biblical interpretation. And then I read this book by this. I met a guy named, I started reading Neville Goddard stuff. And Neville Goddard is like, the Bible's not real. The Bible's not a history book. It's a psychology book. It's on the mind, and how you can basically, every story is how you can take our thoughts and turn them into what we want, like basically water into wine. Like, it's your thoughts that you are cultivating to create the reality that you want. It's like every dramatization in the Bible is a mind science of something that is applicable to our minds and not a real story. And I was like, oh, that's a fascinating approach to the Bible.
So if we go to Mars, are you going to be one of the first? No, you don't want to.
I'm not interested in leaving the planet. I like this planet. I mean, if Elon wants to take a bunch of people, that's totally cool.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be one of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I just never imagined that was ever going to happen.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I never thought I would see that in my life. Yeah. Even if I die, you know.
No, but
you know,
who cares?
Most people who colonize something new.
Yeah. You're gonna be.
That's usually the.
Well, that's what they say about the pioneers. You know, the first ones have the arrows on their back, so you know.
So I don't know, but I kind of, it's just something.
Well, do it. I mean,
it's something that I never thought was possible.
Yeah.
I think I would do it.
I love this planet too much. There's so much beauty here. I mean, like I have the opportunity to move away, and I won't. I love it. Like in my backyard here is the Yuba River. Like it's the most beautiful place. Like I'm up there 3 or 4 times a week, and it's so healing and refreshing. Like I just love it. And part of it's because it's like one of the only places.
Nevada, that whole Auburn, Grass Valley, Nevada City is just
it's a different vibe. It's one of the only places where I can get naked too and not be like, have people like, hey, what's going on over there, you know? But at the same time, it's like, that's where
it's calming, right?
It's very calming, it's very soothing and therapeutic. And I have my journal and I'm sitting there on like a rock writing and all these thoughts are coming. And there's also beautiful people there too, like other people as well. So it's like, you know, it's best of both worlds.
So any closing words, anything else you'd like to say before we close this out, Ryan?
So I'm going again next month. And
I'm going with them. So.
That's right. Hoping to go very deep.
And if we can take video of just me, you know, after or whatever, I want to record it because I don't want to forget anything. Or who knows, maybe.
So the next day, I journaled. You could record it the next day. Like they're very private about their.
We'll have a little audio thing as well.
Yeah.
You know, to talk about it, like.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I went on a walk, and so after the next morning I went on a walk. Because I walk every day anyway, and I made voice memos. Oh, this is one of the things I did. Like I had 2 of my kids come to me the first night, my youngest boy and my middle daughter, and they came to me with issues that they're struggling with, and one of my boy was like, Dad, you don't see me. He's like, I'm here. And you don't see me. And I was like, I was like crushed by that. I was like, shit, I really need to slow down with him and just give him some of my time. How old is he? He's 6.
So what was it he just wants to spend more time with you? Is that what he meant? Or?
What was happening was I've been doubling him up with his other siblings and not giving him his own time. And he's like, I'm here. You just don't see me. Because he's 6, he'll come over and I'll either want to talk to my girlfriend so I'll put on TV or I want to do something. And so I just, you know, I'm a shit dad. Like just, you know, I use a babysitter, the TV as a babysitter. And I'm realizing that I'm like, wow, thank you for coming to me and like letting me, you know, see this. So I've changed that.
What about your other kid? What did they?
Hers wasn't as strong, other than she's also struggling with loneliness as well. And I'm doing the same thing with her. I'm doubling her up with her younger sister, instead of giving her like her one-on-one time.
I mean, that's a difficult ordeal because it's 5 kids, right? How do you spend equal amount of time with each one?
Well, I pick them up after school and I have them all, like we go to dinner, we go to do whatever they want to do that night, and then take them to school the next day.
So you think just give them like an hour, 2 hours? What do you think is going to kind of help resolve this issue?
It's more quality than it is quantity. So for example, like the most recent one I did, like I have no problem with him watching like television. So he wants to like sit there and watch some like so he came over Thursday and he loves the movie The Titanic. He's like, Dad, can we watch the Titanic? I'm like, yeah, sure. He's like, okay, we're going to fast forward it to when the ship starts to sink. So as soon as it hits the iceberg, we're going to watch that to the end. He loves it because people are dying and like they're falling off the thing and like hitting the propeller. Like he just loves that. Like, so, and I'm like, perfect. So I go to the movie theater, I get some movie theater popcorn, I come home and we're sitting on the couch and we're just eating and watching popcorn. And he's like, thanks, Dad. I really had a good time. In the past, I would have like, here's a movie, have fun. I would have done something else. Like, okay. So for me, it's like, I'm making a conscious effort to actually sit with him and be with him and have him, recognize my presence there, rather than being distracted on my phone or doing something else. Yeah. And that's more for me than it is for him. He can feel that, but I, as a dad, need to also know that I'm present for him too. Okay. And I wasn't, and it was one of the things that I hit hard and I cried hard when I saw that, when it came to me, and he like I saw his face and he was just like, he's like, Dad, you don't see me. I'm there, but you don't see me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it was really good. I'm excited for your experience.
No, I'm looking forward to it. There's so many questions I have, so many things I want to learn. I'm sure.
Here's the thing too. I'm sure
I'm going to take a lot of it. This is just going to be my first. I think first I want to fix a lot of trauma. I have a lot of childhood trauma that I want to get out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have a short fuse no more. I don't want anyone to affect me, because sometimes when I feel people are rude or like
Yeah,
jerks, like I kind of snap, and I just don't want to. That's not who I am. I'm a
right.
different person,
Yeah.
And I know that's childhood trauma that I have not dealt with, and I've been keeping it down. And I know it's going to be difficult, but I don't care. If I
Yeah.
can do that, then great. And then another therapy after that,
That's good. I mean, I'm happy that you're going to go into it with that mentality, just like to be courageous and just to face those things. Because here's the thing: is our past is an illusion. It's not even accurate anyway. Whatever we remember, it's an interpretation of what happened.
Yeah,
it's not what really happened. And the more we go back, it's becoming tainted.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like you create this rut of thought and you keep going to the same thing. You're like, well, this is exactly what happened. It's like, that's not what happened. Like, I remember things differently than my siblings remember something differently.
Yeah, everyone does. Yep, I've heard about that.
And so it's like, that's your perception. And so, and it's not the discount or to downplay what you felt and what you experienced. But when you approach it as if like, okay, it's a construct and it's an illusion, I can then go ahead and let it go and move on past that.
Well, I've had a friend tell me that I have childhood trauma. That's why I'm having a short fuse, or I have to go back to that point as a kid, because there's a lot of moments in my life where I felt
or it's just a story.
I didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when you're a kid and you feel very vulnerable and you don't feel safe and things happen to you, right? You're like, where are my parents, or where's my brother? And I think you have to come to that moment and be like, hey, look, everything's okay. And I think that releases that trauma. And because you don't do it, then it keeps manifests in different things in different areas of your body.
And you can go back as an adult and this is like regression therapy. Like as an adult, you can go back to your child and be like, hey, I'm okay. I made it. Here I am. And then your child be like, can heal and be like, okay, this isn't going to define me for the rest of my life. And then whatever that decision was in that moment, it goes away.
Yeah.
It's very healing. Like, so, I mean, my training is in therapy. This is what I went to school for. And this is, I've done a lot of this stuff. And so the cool thing about it is the medicine can do it naturally without you having to go and see a therapist and talk through it.
I know. That's, what do they say? A couple of days of work is like 10 years, 15, 20 years of therapy, in one night.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm excited. It's just, I can't believe it's here and we have it right there, and I'm able to take it. And I know you, and you've already done it. And I thought I had to go all the way to Costa Rica. Like I was already planning like a year from now, my PTO and everything.
Yeah. And I can just go one weekend, man. Well, here's the crazy thing too, is like everyone's like, oh my God, like you're going to lose your mind. You're not gonna be able to drive. And it wears off. And it wears off like so fast. Like the high is a beautiful, blissful high. The feeling that you're left with is still there, but the feeling of being high is I mean, like I drove home the very next day, perfectly fine, and it doesn't last very long. I mean, in the nighttime, I think the second night I went to bed high. This first night I did, and I was like completely like sober by the time it was bedtime.
So what are your next thoughts? For your next kind of, are you thinking like what you want to?
That's a good question. I really don't have anything that like specifically that I'm trying to resolve. I just want to, maybe I want to dive deeper into the mysteries of the universe and the world. Like that's like just like what I'm doing. So I asked the first night my life purpose. Like, what is my life purpose? And that's where like the doctor going in and doing these treatments came from.
What was your life purpose?
It was my life purpose. Like I was open to doing anything. I was like, I'm open to anything. And I was like, this is your path.
I had a guy I went to high school with. We graduated together. I think he was a marine biologist, and he took, I don't know if he went to Venezuela with some other guy he was working with, or Colombia, and he like said that he had a vision of these hands and stuff, and he became a massage therapist.
Oh, beautiful!
And he was making way more money with less time.
Yeah,
doing, because that was like his, and he didn't really comprehend what was going on. But he said, "I'm making way more money now a couple hours a day than I was, even though he liked like marine biology.
Right.
But it was like very time consuming and there was no work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the first persons I interviewed that talked about that. And I feel now that I'm on my journey, like just meeting you,
Yeah.
envisioning the future I want, the way I want to live. Like I
Yeah.
feel it every day. Like I'm so close.
This
Just
would
so
be
close,
this
you
is
know?
the impetus is to push you over that ledge.
Yeah.
Then, well, it's, you asked because you earlier you alluded to, like, we're going to come back. The podcast is going to come back and stuff. Yeah, the podcast is going to come back, but it's different now.
Yeah.
Like it's totally different. Like before,
It was self-serving before.
Very
right?
self-serving. I'm like, all right, who wants to come on the show? Who wants to show us their tits and all this stuff? And I was like, now it's like, no, like it's about healing. Like it's always, the message was always there, but we got distracted.
Yeah.
It became very sexualized, very objectified, and it was fun for a moment, but when I sit with myself, there's no peace in that. I get peace knowing that, like, yes, I want to do 1,000 interviews to change 1 million lives. I want to give people roadmaps so they can go and they can say, hey, I want to be like Jenny. Jenny did X, Y, and Z, and she overcame these problems and challenges. And I also want it to be a continuation of the work that I'm doing, because I truly believe, like, this is like what was given to me, like that it just takes one like pure orgasm to change your life. Like you have this one pure experience, and I've experienced this with several people already, and
I have too.
And they're just like, it's amazing. They're like, and I don't want to take credit for it, but I'm getting these emails and these texts just saying, like, you changed my life. I've been able to. There's one particular woman in general that I really resonated with her story. She had PTSD. She's I think I experienced. She
scars and stuff.
Everything. Yeah. She had, a double mastectomy, just challenges from war. I mean, she was a veteran, and I had an orgasm in 6 months. Excuse me, 6 years. Hadn't had an orgasm from a guy in 6 years, and took my time, helped her feel very beautiful. And after that, she sent me a message. She's like, I've been with multiple men. I can orgasm with any of them now. It's like, you've changed my life. You've opened up an opportunity that I thought was forever closed. And I'm like, fuck, I love this. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life, is I want to give people these opportunities that all it takes is just one. And that's where Topless Talks is, the direction that it's going. Is just like, how can we heal the world sexually? I think it needs so much.
We might have to change the name too to something different, maybe.
Maybe, possibly. I don't know. We'll see.
Or we could still do that and then travel with that eventually.
I think that we'll still have topless guests.
Yeah.
That's not going to go away. No. But that won't be like the main focus. Like, it won't be a requirement. Like, you're gonna show your tits? Okay, you can't on the show then. But I mean, because that's the thing too. Because did I ever share this with you? So really weird experience that I had. I had this idea, this thought that I could read someone's heart chakra. Like
you did tell me.
Yeah, the intuition, we call it tituition, like that if they were to either send in a topless photo or to be there topless, I could read them, and got some very accurate readings. And I'm like, shit, like this is also very therapeutic as well, to be able to connect with someone on that level and to read their, and to have an intuitive read on them, and to share with them, like, hey, this is what's going on in your life, and this is what you need to be doing. And to add that to the mix of, like, so, I mean, you could do the sexual aspect of it, or you can do just the intuitive reading and still change somebody's life, give them direction and hope. But anyway, thank you, Ayahusca, for opening that door for me.
Yeah, no, I think you've already been your real self, your true self. You've already that higher being. I think your best version of you. And I think Iowa just kind of let you know that you're on your path, and then just little things with your kids and
real fine tuning.
Fine tuning what you really need to focus on and go after. And I look forward to seeing you grow and this friendship I have with you. And I'm thankful for everything. I'm thankful for the path my life's going, and I just love this. I love that we're friends, and
Thank you. I do
you're
too.
teaching me things, and I'm growing with you. So
Shit, you're hella smart too. I'm listening to all these books you read and all these people you've like followed. I'm like, damn, dude, Amato's a smart ass dude.
yeah, no, I think I'm also becoming my best version of myself, who I've been kind of suppressing and putting down, and trying to be like humble, confident, stoic. But
yeah,
I think you have to talk, and you have to see people have to see you grow, and they're gonna grow with you. I don't know if we talked about it.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
before we put the cameras up, right?
Yeah,
And that's what this show is all about, is inspiring people to follow their own path. Thank God we're here in Northern California,
right.
and we can build this community in different towns. If Ryan can start a church of sexual healing, you can do whatever you think that you want to do, and just watch us grow. And we look forward to seeing everybody progress as a community. This is a community. This is Northern California's community, and talk.
Yeah.
Any parting words?
No, I think you said it, man. It's a community, and we're happy to see you grow as we grow.
All right, thanks everybody. I'll try to be more consistent with the news and everything, maybe some sports, but we're still kind of balancing out. I have an office coming in Roseville. We have one here in Yuba City. So, and then we'll be traveling up and down here soon. So.
Yes, we will be.
So it'll be fun. So
as long as there's rivers nearby.
All right.